Hello, and welcome back to your favorite and go-to YouTube channel to study and learn about business statistics, artificial, and facts. And today, I will be teaching you about range and standard deviation. And here are the contents or menu, so to say, on what I will be teaching you for today's video. For the first, I will be teaching you about range. Second, what is standard deviation? Third, standard deviation for ungrouped data. And of course, we can't have standard deviation for ungrouped data if we don't have, fourth, standard deviation for grouped data. But before we start, here's a fun fact question for you. Can you guess which K-pop group has the world record for the fastest sold out music concert tickets? Stay tuned to the end to find out. Now, on to the lessons. First up, we have range. What is range? Range is the difference between the data with the largest value and the data with the smallest value. And the equation is x maximum, or the largest value, minus x minimum, or the smallest value. And now we go on to the examples. Calculate the range from the data down below. 20, 21, 19, 17, 20, 21, 23, 24, and last but not least, 25. As we can see here, 17 is the lowest or the min, and 25 is the max or the largest value. So we put that into our equation. Range equals x max minus x min. Now we have r equals 25 minus 17, and it equals to 8. And that is it for range. And now, on to the next lesson, which is standard deviation. But what is standard deviation, you might ask? Now, let's take a quick history class, shall we? The term standard deviation was first introduced by Carl Pearson in 1894 in his book on the dissection of asymmetrical frequency curves. Standard deviation is a statistical technique to explain the homogeneity of a group of data. Standard deviation is also a statistical value that is used to determine how distributed the data is in the sample, as well as how close the individual data points is to the average value or mean of the sample. The standard deviation of the dataset can be equals to 0, greater than, or less than 0. Now, you might be thinking, who uses standard deviation anyways? And to that I say, I have the answer you are looking for, my dear viewers. Standard deviation is generally used by statisticians or people involved in statistics to find out whether the sample data is representative of the entire population. Finding the right data for a population is very difficult. Therefore, to make it easier to find a sample of data that represents the entire population is selected. And now, here are the steps to find the standard deviation values, and the steps that are needed to be done are: first, calculate the average value of each existing data point. Second, calculate the deviation for each data point from the average. Third, square the deviation of each data point and then look for the individual squared deviation of the average. And the last but not least, the fourth, the standard deviation is the square root of the variance value. And now, on to the third lesson. Standard deviation for ungrouped data. The standard deviation is a summary measure of the differences of each observation from the mean. If the differences themselves were added up, the positive would exactly balance the negative, and so their sum would be 0. Consequently, the squares of the differences are added. The sum of the squares is then divided by the number of observations minus 1 to give the mean of the squares, and the square roots are taken to bring the measurements back to the units we started with. If you were to find the standard deviation of 4, 9, 11, 12, 17, 5, 8, 12, and 14, we would first have to work out the average or the mean, which is approximately 10.222. And now that we have the mean or the average, we can now subtract the mean individually from each of the numbers given and square the result. This is equivalent to the x minus x outer bracket squared step. The x refers to the values given in the questions. X are 4, 9, 11, 12, 17, 5, 8, 12, and 14, and once we add them with the x minus x outer bracket squared, 4 becomes 38.7, 9 becomes 1.49, 11 becomes 0.60, 12 becomes 3.16, 17 becomes 45.9, 5 becomes 27.3, 8 becomes 4.94, 12 becomes 3.16, 14 becomes 14.3, and now we can divide it by the n. What is n, you might ask? N is the number of values. So in this case, it is 9. And now this gives us 15.51. And finally, we can now get the square root of this, which is 3.94. And that is it for the example and for standard deviation for ungrouped data as a whole. As we know, standard deviation ungrouped data wouldn't be complete without a standard deviation group data, am I right? And now, on to the final part of our journey, standard deviation of group data. Right now, my dear viewers, you guys may be wondering, how does one calculate standard deviation of grouped data step by step? Now I'm going to show you guys how to calculate standard deviation of group data step by step, and there are 9 steps to follow. I will be leading you guys through every single one, and now on to the first step. Make the frequency distribution table with 6 columns. Write class and frequency, or Fi, in first and second columns respectively. Step 2. Find n equals sigma ni equals 1 Fi. Step 3. Find the midpoint of each class. This is denoted by xi. It is the average of the upper class limit and the lower class limit. Write xi in the third column. Step 4. Find fi xi, product of frequency and midpoint. Write those values in the fourth column. And now, on to step 5. Find x using the formula 1 over n times sigma power of n 1 equals I equals 1 fi xi. Step 6. Find xi minus x outer bracket 2 and enter in the fifth column. Step 7. Find fi times xi minus x outer column power of 2 and enter in the sixth column. Step 8. Find sigma fi and times it with xi minus x outer bracket power of 2. And now for the last part, step 9. Find standard deviation using the formula 1 over n multiplied by root of the whole frequency multiplied by midpoint minus mean squared. What's this? There's a notification. Maybe we should open it. And now, on to the examples. The mean and standard deviation of the marks of 200 candidates were found to be 40 and 15 respectively. Then it was discovered that the score of 40 was wrongly read as 50. How do we solve this? Here's the solution. Given the numbers of candidates are 200 and the mean is 40 and the standard deviation is 15, correct that sigma x equals to 40 times 200 minus 50 plus 40, which is equals to 7,990. And corrected x is 7,990 divided by 200, which is equals to 39.95. Incorrect sigma x squared is equals to n times standard deviation squared plus x squared, which equals to 200 times 15 squared plus 40 squared equals to 200 times 225 plus 1,600, which is equals to 3,600,000. Correct sigma x squared equals 365,000 minus 2,500 plus 1,600, which is equals to 3,640, 100. And the square root is 364,100 divided by 200 minus 39.95 squared. Square root 1,820.5 minus 1,596.0025 equals square root of 224.49, which is 14.98. And that is it for today's lesson. I hope you guys understand it well, and I hope to see you guys in the future. And now for the answer from the beginning. Which K-pop group has the world record for the fastest sold out tickets? It is held by none other than the K-pop boy group, which is EXO. EXO became the K-pop group with the fastest sold out ticket sale in the world, with as much as 60,000 tickets being sold at 0.2 seconds for the concert being held at Go-Kyo Sky Dome. For the concert, the EXOlution at 2016, EXO managed to sell their tickets for 0.4 seconds. And that is it for today's session. But before I go, I would like to end with a Bible quote which is taken from the Philippians 4 verse 6. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. Thank you for your attention. I hope to see you guys next time. Bye-bye.